trade deadline has come and gone, and Boston stood pat. The Celtics, who are 37 and 22nd in the East, and own the draft pick that, as of right now, has a 25% chance of ending up being the top overall pick. Here's Danny Ainge on the no-move move.
How close were you guys to potentially making a deal?
It's hard to say. I think that it takes two teams, so a lot of times we don't know how close. A lot of times it's very easy to tell that the teams are very far apart, but a lot of discussion, good conversation, a lot of rumors that were true, rumors that weren't true.
Will Beantown making moves without making moves. Do you agree with the Celtics strategy here?
No. I think it's time to fire. It's time to fire your ammunition. As probably you come to expect, I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. Pretty much everything that comes from that region, that's where my affiliations lie. There was a theory for several years in Dallas of keep your powder dry. This would allow the Dallas Mavericks to retain cap space. One day make a run at LeBron, maybe Carmelo, pair somebody with Dirk for all these years. It never happened. The dry powder never turned into a real star, a real asset. And there's this reminds me, what the Boston Celtics are doing reminds me of that time. There is no doubt that the Celtics have assets, amazing assets, both young players and draft picks, Max, in 2017 and 2018. But at some point, potential is just that, potential. And you have to turn it into a reality. Here's what I think. The question comes down to this, Max. Do you think Jimmy Butler is good enough to lead a team to the NBA Finals? Is Jimmy Butler good enough to take a team past LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers? I think Jimmy Butler is a top 10 player in the NBA. And with the right players around him, Jimmy Butler can take a team to the finals. Now, can he beat the Warriors? That's an entirely different equation. But can he get them there? Yes, I think with Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford, that team is good enough to get there. Now, you have to trade in some assets. Nothing comes for free. And if the reported trade of Jay Crowder and either Avery Bradley or Marcus Smart plus a number one was what's offered, I think Danny Ainge should have done that. He should have done that in a heartbeat. Jimmy Butler becomes your number one. Who's the number one on the Celtics as it exists right now? Who's the guy they put?
Thomas.
It's Isaiah Thomas. How would Isaiah Thomas look as a number two? That's a team that I'm scared of. That's a team.
I don't know that Isaiah Thomas is the number two if Jimmy Butler's on that team. I also don't know if Jimmy Butler's a top 10 player. And you're right, if you added Jimmy Butler to that team, maybe if the Cavs sustained some kind of injury and the Celtics played exceptionally well, maybe the Celtics could even get by the Cavs and lose to the Warriors in the finals, having traded some of the assets that will make them a powerhouse going forward. Remember, Isaiah Thomas is in his mid-late 20s right now, and they still have him for a couple more years.
That's why you do it now, Max.
Horford is not a superstar, but he's not exactly in decline either. He has a couple more years, and he's an excellent kind of modern big. Can play the 4 and the 5, face up, post the whole thing, defend multiple positions, close out on three-point shooters, defend the rim. He's a really useful big, and one of the top handful of bigs when you think of all those things he can do. They are missing another dynamic scorer. But to take Crowder and let's say Avery Bradley away from the team is to actually make the defense worse, even if Butler makes up for some of that. So you're taking a step backward. You're claiming to take 2 steps forward, but those 2 steps still get you a loss in the finals, and now you won't be as good going forward because you gave up what might be the number one overall pick in a really good draft. Now, one of the reasons they couldn't get the deal done may have been because we don't know if that pick is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft or not, and other teams are saying, what if it's not the number 1 pick? What if it's the number 4 pick, the number 3 pick? And we can't get one of the 2 guys we most want, right? Okay, in the offseason, they'll find out what exactly that pick is. Meantime, they ain't winning a championship this year anyway, so why spin your wheels? Danny Ainge made, I think, the best move at the trade deadline, other than Boogie Cousins getting picked up by New Orleans, of any team by standing pat.
The argument against what the Celtics did is the same argument you and I just had 5 minutes ago. It's the Los Angeles Clippers. They're stuck. They're stuck in Clippers land. The NBA is the most predictable league of the top 3. There are 2, maybe 3 teams that can win the NBA championship. Warriors, Cavs, maybe Spurs. They're here. Then this group, where the Celtics lie, with teams like the Clippers. There is nothing right now on that roster that will take the Celtics up into the top group. Your argument that they're going to sacrifice their future to put Jimmy Butler on the team to try to get into that group, which I think, by the way, Jimmy Butler pushes them on the edge of that top group, is false. They still have Brooklyn's 2018 first-round pick. They have Jaylen Brown, the number 3 pick last year, on the team. Essentially, what you're doing is upgrading from Crowder to Butler and giving away, yes, Avery Bradley or Marcus Smart, because you got to pay something to get something. By the way, what disrespect you have for Jimmy Butler. Not top 10. What are you going to put Jimmy Butler?
By the way, you could argue top 10. He's certainly top 20. I'm not sure that he's top 10. I could think of a bunch of guys off the top of my head. That's a separate argument. I like Jimmy Butler a lot, Will. I think he would make the Celtics better, but ultimately they would likely be spinning their wheels. Now, Larry Brown to Rick Carlisle, the Pistons once upon a time, and then they brought in Rasheed Wallace. That put them over the top. That was a calculated gamble I could understand in a weaker Eastern Conference because there was no LeBron James on a super team at the time, on a Lakers team that was not nearly as good as people thought. And if you paid close attention, you could see Shaq was not the same player. He postponed surgery that year. That's the kind of strategic move that can result in a championship, a really good shot to do it. That's when you put your chips in. At a low cost, bring in Rasheed Wallace to put you over the top. At a high cost, when you have a very bright future, considering the draft picks you just mentioned, and the young talent on your team, and the talented young coach, and the smart GM, now's not the time to spin your wheels. If you look at dynasties throughout NBA history, Will, for example, the Lakers, when they went all in on Kobe and Shaq, before that, they had a nice 45-50 win team with some all-star caliber type players, but rather than going after whoever's available at the time, Derek Coleman, I'm just making a name up, and trying to get good enough to compete but ultimately lose to the Bulls in the Jordan era, they were smart. They bided their time. They waited till truly transformative pieces emerged, Kobe, Shaq, and then they made their moves. They remained flexible. The Celtics are in a similar position. They got a good team, a good young coach, a smart GM, lots of assets going forward. The time is not quite right, Max, if it's not a guy who will put you over the top.
My dad was a trial lawyer in Texas, and he once told me this: Will, you do too much ready, aim, fire. Me, I'm fire, 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 aim. Max Kellerman, you do too much ready, aim, fire. It's time to fire. And you're sitting on your powder, you're sitting on dry powder, aiming away for months and years at a time will spoil your assets. Time is not infinite. Time is a resource that runs out. Let me explain.
Yes, but that doesn't apply here.
It does. It certainly does. Al Horford, 30. You said it. You pointed it out. Isaiah Thomas.
Next year he'll be 31. This is not make or break.
Max,
next year you will have much more certainty in terms of your assets next year.
28. The reason the Celtics are in the position they are today is because of guys who only have a few years left in their prime. You add Jimmy Butler to that to take advantage of the present. And guess what? You don't have to sacrifice your future. You still have Brooklyn's other first-round pick. You still have Jaylen Brown. You can simultaneously bump up your ceiling by adding Jimmy Butler and retain your long-term future. You, Max, want to sit and aim in Clipperland until time runs out.
No, I was for a Clippers trade because they had enough young talent and because it wasn't formed right. The Celtics are building towards something, but listen, I understand the idea, don't aim too long because then the target moves, but don't fire too early either. The idea that there's a tide in the affairs of men is actually usually misunderstood because ultimately didn't Brutus and Cassius do the wrong thing?
I mean, what are you talking about? You're talking about Julius Caesar right now?
I certainly am.
In the first 30 minutes, I've got a 1926 New York Yankees reference and Julius Caesar.
Don't show your age, Max.
Damn right you did.
The boys got range. All right, gentlemen, I have breaking news for you. Charles Oakley was at the Knicks game sitting right next to the owner, but not the owner you're thinking of. It wasn't James Dolan, but Cavaliers owner Dane Gilbert. The Knicks were in Cleveland, Oakley's hometown. Charles, why'd you decide to come to this game?
Where does your relationship stand with James Dolan right now?
I'm just taking it easy. I'm not worried about a relationship. Just take a day at a time.
Were you surprised to see Carmelo Anthony still in the Knicks uniform today?
I don't know what happened in this league. I don't know what happened with, who make trades, this and that. I mean, things happen. It wasn't maybe, one or two trades, so I'm not surprised.
So you're back in an NBA game involving the Knicks. When do you think you could be back courtside at a game in Madison Square Garden?
I don't know. I don't know right now.
What are you waiting for to make that happen?
I don't know. I don't know.
I really need to know what everybody's end game is here. But, Max, I'll start with you. What is the message that Charles Oakley is sending?
I'm going to get to that in 1 second. First of all, the big takeaway for me is that it looks like Gilbert is trolling Dolan. Maybe Gilbert doesn't want to be perceived as the worst owner in the league, so it's like, oh, it's that guy. And he's probably right. Dolan is probably the worst. Or Ranadive. They're in a death match right now.
Art of war strategy right there.
I think that Oakley's basic point here is one that Knicks fans will appreciate, but he may be hurting his own cause. What does that mean? Look, what everyone is saying, what I even said the other day is, Charles, Take the W. You know how some people can't take the L, they can't take the loss? He can't take the win. He won. Take that W, Oak. You don't need to look bad here because he's starting to look bad. But I think Oakley's bigger point is there's something wrong with the Knicks, and it's Dolan. And I think Knicks fans understand that too. So yes, he's extending an olive branch, Dolan, but I don't want it. I don't want to lend any kind of sense that this franchise is normal, that it's all okay, because it's not, and then I'm part of the problem. The issue with that is Oakley's making himself look bad, and in comparison, starting to make Dolan look better, which is defeating the purpose. So I'm not saying it's a wise strategy of Charles Oakley, but I do think that's the basic idea. No, I'm not going to make up with this guy. I don't want to make up with this guy. I'm not going to lend any credibility I have to the idea that this franchise is normal and good. There's something rotten here. It's the owner, and I don't want to kiss and make up because I think that because Charles Oakley wants to be part of the solution, which is to create more pressure for Dolan. Whether that's right-headed or wrong-headed in terms of the actual effect, ultimately, I think that's what Oakley is getting at here.
I don't think so. I don't think he has any master plan. But if he did, Max, that would be a perfectly legitimate position to hold. The funny thing is, Max, I think the entire sports world was probably in unanimous agreement that James Dolan was a bad owner, that he was actively undercutting any potential success for the Knicks a few weeks ago. Everyone was unanimous in that belief. So even if Charles Oakley had this master plan and this larger point to make that you're pointing out, he's undercut it. And you said that. He has completely undercut it. He has turned critics of James Dolan into supporters, if not supporters, apologists for James Dolan. And logically, I have become that. I think James Dolan is a bad. How do you mess up the New York Knicks? It's the New York Knicks, the place you should be able to attract any free agent to, basketball mecca, Madison Square Garden, and somehow you mess that up. But that's not Oakley's larger point. It's not. And that's why he's failing, by the way. That's why he's failing to communicate to us. Molly, you asked, what is the end game? Here's what I think the end game is for Charles Oakley. Revenge. It's simple and utter emotional revenge. Max, I think his pride is wounded. This is a man who was universally loved, probably still is, by Knicks fans, who had a reputation as a fighter on the basketball court, a tough guy, someone who wouldn't back down from anyone. And this is what happened to him. He was manhandled, rightly or wrongly, and that's a different debate, out of Madison Square Garden. He was embarrassed. Then he was embarrassed afterwards when Dolan insinuated that he had an alcohol problem or other problems like anger problems. Every step of the way, his pride was dinged. He was embarrassed. That's why when Adam Silver sat down, this is my guess as to the equation, why Adam Silver, when he sat down with James Dolan and Charles Oakley, Oakley wasn't interested in putting this on the right track, in Silver's own words. We didn't get back on the right track. Why? Because Oakley's not looking for a happy ending. He's not looking to hold hands.
Bill, do you think
he's not looking to walk down a path together. Molly, he wants
But
revenge.
do you think he's justified in wanting revenge, or you think it's child's play?
Well, I think it's child's play. I think you can't show up to your former employer's office. I don't know what happened there. It looks like he offered his criticism / berated Dolan, got physical with security. No one in any business can do that and then somehow play the victim when you get thrown out. I think Oakley was wrong.
Oakley was a vocal critic of the Knicks, you can say, because he felt snubbed by them, but he's saying a lot of the same things that all Knicks fans are saying. Dolan is a terrible owner. He's held the team back. He only cares about the bottom line. He has a bunch of gullible Knicks fans, maybe including Oakley, who will show up to see a terrible product for decades on end as this incompetent guy ruins the franchise. And so he's angry as a Knicks fan at Jim Dolan, as most Knicks fans are.
But not every Knicks fan showed up and put their finger in security guards' faces, got physical with security guards. The point is this. Somehow, two characters who had reputations for the exact opposite of where we land today. Oakley loved. Dolan reviled. Yet when you look at this individual incident, you look at the circumstances of just this situation alone, one is the bad guy and one is not. Oakley,
I wouldn't say one is not. If you know people who've had dealings with Jim Dolan, almost universally, except for the few people that he's extremely loyal to, you talk to other people, been in meetings, etc., they don't like him. It seems that he's not only incompetent, but it seems like he likes to flex his power just as an exercise in flexing it. He doesn't listen to the basketball people, etc. And by the way, the proof is in the pudding. He's a miserable failure in terms of the win-loss record, as you mentioned, as the Knicks guy, as the Knicks owner at Madison Square Garden, in the greatest city in the world. You should be able to attract anyone. He can't attract a single major free agent. So, and that's Dolan's doing. So you say that in this interaction with Oakley, his stock rose. No, his stock fell immediately. It plummeted even lower, and Oakley's rose until until Oakley mishandled the aftermath of the Adam Silver meeting. At that point, Oakley's stock started to fall again, and in comparison, Dolan started to look a little more reasonable. But the question as to what's Oakley's end game here, whether or not his pride is stung, is he's refusing to be a part of the Dolan circus, legitimizing or normalizing Dolan
right now,
and his behavior.
He's centering in the circus. Right now, he's centering in the circus. He is not refusing to be a part. You have to be able to accept these. Hold on, Max. You have to be able to hold all of these thoughts at the same time. James Dolan is an incompetent owner, and Charles Oakley was wrong in this situation. Until Charles Oakley understands those two things, that he was wrong in this particular situation, he'll keep looking for revenge. He'll never get it. He'll keep looking to get his pride back, but he can't do that until he understands the role he played in this circus.
Would you agree that Oakley was not perceived as wrong by the vast majority of the public until he didn't accept the olive branch extended in the meeting by Dolan with Adam Silver, right? Oakley was the hero, Dolan was the villain. It was the aftermath of the meeting that Oakley seemed to mishandle, not the original situation.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. That's what they tell me. Speaking of revenge, Tony Romo might be looking for his own version of that. Cowboys fans, you're being properly represented today. Will Kane is here. The odds for Tony Romo's future team are in. Does he actually have a shot of staying in Dallas, or there is a better home for him? We will tell you that. Plus, last night, Boogie Cousins debut in the Big Easy. He had a solid first game as a Pelican, but the team lost by 30. Is this a sign of things to come? We get into all of it first take. So the NBA trade deadline has come and gone, and Boston stood pat. The Celtics, who are 37 and 22nd in the East, and own the draft pick that, as of right now, has a 25% chance of ending up being the top overall pick. Here's Danny Ainge on the no move.
How close were you guys to potentially making a deal?
It's hard to say. I think that it takes two teams, and so a lot of times we don't know how close. A lot of times it's very easy to tell that the teams are very far apart, but a lot of discussion, good conversation, rumors that were true, rumors that weren't true.
Will, Beantown making moves without making moves. Do you agree with the Celtics strategy here?
No. I think it's time to fire. It's time to fire your ammunition. As probably you come to expect, I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. Pretty much everything that comes from that region, that's where my affiliations lie. There was a theory for several years in Dallas of keep your powder dry. This would allow the Dallas Mavericks to retain cap space. One day make a run at LeBron, maybe Carmelo, pair somebody with Dirk for all these years. It never happened. The dry powder never turned into a real star, a real asset. And there's this reminds me, what the Boston Celtics are doing reminds me of that time. There is no doubt that the Celtics have assets, amazing assets, both young players and draft picks, Max, in 2017 and 2018. But at some point, potential is just that, potential. And you have to turn it into a reality. Here's what I think. The question comes down to this, Max. Do you think Jimmy Butler is good enough to lead a team to the NBA Finals? Is